All right, 8.4 notes today. We're going to talk about nth roots. Okay, so we've done a lot of work with square roots and we've done a little bit with cube roots. It says the volume of a sphere can be followed using that formula. Find the radius of the sphere if the volume is 225 centimeters cubed. So we're going to take 225 and plug it in for the volume. And now we're going to solve for r. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to divide by 4/3 pi on both sides. Now, when you're putting this in your calculator, you'll probably need to keep that into parentheses when you're dividing there. All right, so those will cancel. And r cubed is now going to be 53.7. There's more to that, but we're going to just stop with it there. So to get rid of a cube, we are going to cube root it, just like we did when we have square roots. So you're going to grab your graphing calculator and you're going to push math, and it's going to be the 4th button down. It's going to say a cube root. So you're going to type in the cube root of 53.7, or you can even do second negative to pull your previous answer. All right, and then we find our radius is approximately 3.77. All right, so we're going to talk about those roots. We talked about a cube root there. You'll want to pause the video here. You can write down the in the words portion. A squared. So if we want a by itself, we're going to take the square root of 16. Well, the square root of 16 is 4. Now, if we throw a negative under that radical, we learned this year, I think it was back in Unit 4 probably, about complex numbers and imaginary numbers. So we're going to pull an I out of that square root of negative 16. So then we get the square root of 16, which is 4. So we get 4i for our solution. If we have a cube root of 27 to find a cubed is 27, we're going to take the cube root of 27. So if you grab your calculators, you push that math button, number 4, that gave you the cube root of 27 is 3. Now, if you are negative, we're going to take the cube root of negative 27. Grab that calculator and plug that in. Make sure you're using the negative button, not the minus button. All right, you should find that you get negative 3, which makes sense. If I take negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, that is negative 27. Now, when I'm taking the cube root of something, I'm looking for what's a number times itself 3 times. That will give me what's underneath there. All right, so 8 to the 4th, we're going to take the 4th root of 81. Now, 4th root, you're going to be able to go math, and then if you look below I think it's number 5, you're going to see like a square root symbol, but it's going to have an X. So that's where you can type a 4 in. And we find that to be 3. Now, if we look at my negative one, you cannot take a 4th root of a negative number. You can't take a even power, 6, 8, 2, 4, 10 root of a negative number. There is no number that is negative that I can multiply it an even amount of times and end up with a negative number. So what we need to actually do for this one is we're going to break it out into the 4th root of 81 times the 4th root of negative 1. So once we pull that negative out, now we can actually do the 4th root of 81. We just found that before is 3, and then it's going to be times the 4th root of negative 1. That whole thing. We can't pull an I out because I is the square root of negative 1, and so we can't pull it out because we're taking 4th roots. Then let's go ahead and a to the 5th, we're going to take a 5th root of 32. You can go ahead and grab that calculator and plug that in. We find that to be 2. You can do the same thing. You can type it into your calculator, the 5th root of negative 32. And you're going to find that to be negative 2. It is a-okay to take an odd root of a negative number. And then that last row is just going to be our generic. We can type in numbers for A and B. All right, so let's go ahead and practice a few of these. First one's really nice and easy. It's a square root. So square root of 25 gives us 5. Now when I have my variables, if it's a square root, I can just take that 4 and divide it by 2 and get x squared. Because think about it, we started when we talked about these, like a lot of times we looked for pairs. Oh, I have one pair, I have two pairs. So then that's where my x squared comes from. If we look at problem 2, it has a negative outside the radical. That just means the negative will be in our solution. We're going to take the square root of something to the 8th power. So we're just going to divide that 8 by 2 because it's a square root. And we're going to leave our solution like this. We don't have to go ahead and FOIL that all out. All right, so if we look here, we're going to take the 5th root of 32. Grab that calculator, type that in, make it do the work for you. The 5th root of 32 is going to be 2. And now we're just going to take our powers and divide by 5. So 15 divided by 5 gives us 3. 20 divided by 5 gives us 4. All right, number 4 is a square root of -9. We're going to pull out that negative and make it an I. And then we have the square root of 9, so that gives us 3I. All right, next one, square root of 81, y to the 6th. So the square root of 81, we find that to be 9. And then y to the 6th, we're just going to take 6 and divide by 2, and we get y to the 3rd. Now keep in mind, if this was the square root of 81 to the 7th power, now my power is odd. So we wouldn't say 9y to the 3.5. We would break this into a y and a y to the 6th. So we'd get 9y cubed. That would take care of these two pieces. Then we still have this. That would go back underneath my square root. So if it ever has an odd power and it's like a squared, a 4th, a 6th, we're just going to pull one of them off. All right, go ahead and find the 6th root of 729. Use your calculator, make it do the hard work for us. All right, we find that to be 3. So then we're going to have x, we have 30, we're going to divide by 6, so we get 5. And then we have 18, and we're going to divide by 6, and we get cubed. All right, should feel pretty comfortable with these. I want you to give these two both a try on your own. So go ahead and pause your video here, and then when you return, you'll see my answers up there. All right, x to the 8th, we're going to divide that 8 by 8. And then we have 81. We take the 4th root of that, and we get 3. And then a plus 1 to the 12th power. That's, again, we're just going to take that 12 and divide it by 4. All right, we got 2 more here that I want you to do. Go ahead, pause here. These are both square roots. And go ahead and find that answer, and then come back and check it with mine. All right, square root of 100 gives us 10. X to the 10th, we divide by 2, we get 5. Square root of 64 is 8, and then we take that 14th power, we're going to divide by 2 because it's a square root, and we get to the 7th power. So let's go ahead and do a couple word problems here. It says the distance a planet is from the sun is a function of the length of its year. The formula is d equals the cube root of 6t squared, where d is the distance of the planet from the sun in millions of miles, and t is the number of Earth days in the planet's year. If the length of the year on Mars is 687 Earth days, how far from the sun is Mars? So we're going to plug 687 into t, because remember, t is the number of Earth days in the year. So we have the cube root of 6 times 8, oops, my bad, 687. And then squared. You're just going to be able to type that all straight into your calculator and calculate that out. If you want to find what goes under the radical, you can type 6 times 687 squared first, and then you can take your cube root. So let's go ahead and round it to 1 decimal place. So we get about 141.5 million miles. All right, one more. We have these lovely spheres, stone spheres of Costa Rica. They were formed. One of the stone spheres has a volume of about 113,997.34 inches cubed. What's the diameter of the stone sphere? So this is similar to what we started with, but this time instead of giving, oh yeah, they give us the volume. So this is exactly like the first problem we started with. We're going to type the volume in for V. All right, so the first step we did was take and divide by 4/3 pi. Again, don't forget to put that into parentheses when you type it into your calculator. So when you type that in, hopefully you got approximately 27,000. I think it's like 0.1, 0.01 something. And that's equal to r cubed. So we're going to take cube root on both sides to find out what r is. Now r, we end up being 30.0, but it's asking us for the diameter. So the radius is only half of it, so my diameter is 60. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you later.